one of those families that's really important to know.
Oh, catnip around?
The catnip shows actually a little better or a little easier how we identify it. So we have, of course, if you noticed, I mentioned before when we were working with catnip, square stem, right? One of the indicators of the mint family. So also this one has a square stem, okay? The other thing is opposite leaves. So opposite leaves are kind of like pairs, like north, south, east, west, north, south, east, west. So here you can see there's a pair, and then you turn it, there's a pair there. And so that's another characteristic, right? Alternate leaves mean like one leaf here, one leaf there, like a staircase, right? So you have those two distinctions to be made. The other factor is a bilaterally symmetrical flower, which means that if you put a line down the center of the flower and you look on both left and right, you're going to see the same exact pattern. Not horizontally symmetrical or not radially symmetrical, right? So does everyone, if you want, you can grab this or look closely or anything. And also if you look very closely at the motherwort plant here, it also has a bilaterally symmetrical flower. Each one of these, right? There are multiple flowers. Each one is bilaterally symmetrical. So the other factor is it smells like a mint. And that's very relative. It's not me. It's very relative because it means smells minty. It doesn't mean smells like peppermint, right? So there's a lot of different version of what smelling minty means. And so always exceptions. So these are general rules to get you close enough. And then if you get to the point where you've identified a mint, of course you know what peppermint is good for, right? So they always have those characteristics, right? That's the mint family. They're always tonic for the stomach, right? Opening, aromatic, right? Blood cleansing, liver stimulating, diuretic. They will all do that, right? What you can do is overnight you wilt it. So like, you know, if you have a car, that's your drying rack. You don't need an Excalibur, right? Those things dry things. So you can like wilt an herb overnight, just drive out some of the moisture. Basically the rule of thumb is that if you're dealing with alcohol, the moisture is no problem. If you're dealing with making an infused oil, like using a fat base, then that moisture coming out of the plant is going to cause it to go rancid, right? Or honey can cause it to ferment, right? So you want to wilt in that case. So even if you leave it for 12 to 24 hours, it's going to dehydrate some of the moisture, and then it won't make your oil, your olive oil, rancid or anything like that.
For teas, just a straight tea, do you need to dehydrate it all?
No, but what I find is that it's much harder to make a flavorful tea out of fresh leaves than it is out of dried leaves.
It does seem that way.
Yeah, just like double it, you know, chop it really finely, and you know, maybe a little bit of higher heat if it's fresh.
Do you have to wait until the mint has made its flowers before using it?
No, not necessarily. You don't have to. I mean, if you're feeling ill, what you got is what you need. But if you are looking at the privilege of harvesting in the most optimal time, then, you know, the more you get into this, the more you start timing the harvest and the cycles and start living by those cycles. So like I'm living in a way right now, living in a van where I can go to the optimal spot, the optimal time, find what's optimally coming out and make it a choice. Like this week I've been working on making a fresh heal-all tincture, right? Prunella vulgaris. And so I've literally picked from like 10 different parks. So I've picked a minimal amount off of each plant from several different parks. So it was very regenerative harvest, and it's in its peak. So I was able to harvest it in its peak. So now I have that for next year, where if you suddenly wake up and you're in a crisis, you need to harvest what's there. So depends on what you have available to you. And that's also where developing and building an apothecary, that means you look at your family's ailments and you develop medicine based on that. And you say, okay, what happens in these times? And then you stock your cabinet full of things to help with those, so that the sooner it happens, the better it is to start treating it, you know? So if you're like, oh, well, my husband gets that same sinus infection at the same point of time, then you're like, eat this, drink this, take this, here. And then suddenly it's all better. Check out lots more foraging and herbalism videos on my website at returntonature.us. Happy trails, friends.